Welcome to another CUBE webinar. Today we have Push.ai here to talk about unlocking proactive intelligence using CUBE and Push.ai. Of course, we have Brian and Tony here from CUBE, and then we're introducing Zach Mandel and Britton Stamper, the CEO and CTO of Push.ai, to this webinar. So before we begin, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. If you're brand new to our webinar series, you can ask your questions in real time. Just simply enter your question in the question box, click submit, and we'll get to those during the Q&A portion of the webinar. And the recording of this webinar will be available on demand right on our events page after the live show. And what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to do an overview of CUBE, introduce you to Push.ai, talk about our integration together, and do some live demos using CUBE plus Push.ai. And lastly, we'll end the show with live Q&A. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Brian here to talk about CUBE. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, thanks, Nathan. Yeah, everybody. Hey, good morning. Happy to be here with you. I'm going to apologize in advance if you can tell I have a little bit of a cold. So if you, my voice breaks up or if you hear any coughing, I'm sorry for that in advance. But yeah, as Nathan said, my name is Brian Bickle. I'm the VP of Strategy and Alliances here at CUBE, responsible for all of our technology partnerships with great folks like our partners here at Push.ai that we're here with today. And yeah, I'm going to kick us off by talking a little bit about CUBE. If you aren't familiar with CUBE, CUBE is a universal semantic layer. And to break down maybe the problem semantic layers are solving a little bit, I want to talk through one of the observations that our founders made and kind of the background of the problem we're solving. And that problem is that if you've built a data stack of any kind of complexity, you have a lot of different data modeling that has shown up in different areas of your data stack. Potentially, if you have a BI tool, maybe something more traditional like a Looker or a Tableau or a Power BI, those tools have their own data models inside them. We call that sort of like a lightweight semantic layer. Your data warehouse probably has a data model inside of it that you've spent a lot of time thinking about. Sometimes there are implicit business logic inside your transformations as well, like whether that's a DBT. If you have customer-facing analytics or you're layering AI into your applications now, you also tend to have these data models that show up there as well. And the idea behind semantic layers and this movement with something like a universal semantic layer like CUBE is that really what we want to do is we want to centralize all of those data models into one location where we can do our data modeling once, and we can deliver that same data model to all of our downstream applications. So if you take that kind of problem and then you look for how CUBE solves it, this slide lets you know sort of like where CUBE sits in the architecture. It's generally right next to the warehouse and then in between all of the downstream consumption, whether that's traditional BI, whether that's notebooks, customer-facing or embedded analytics, AI tools, or products like Push.ai, which we're happy to feature here today, that help you with more proactive analytics and metrics monitoring. So let's dig into exactly what CUBE provides and typically what semantic layers provide. And some semantic layers that our competitors don't provide all of these things, but this is generally a good idea to look for in semantic layers, these four main pillars that we talk about. The first is data modeling. Data modeling is sort of the reason we're here, right? The CUBE data modeling experience is provided in a code-first experience. That's all JavaScript, YAML, or Python. And there's a lot of ability to do dynamic data modeling in that, to do some very clever things, at runtime. And it's quite powerful. And also when I say that it's a code-based experience, you can check that into your repo. You can do version control and kind of the nice software development lifecycle things we like to do. And The big idea behind how Cube does this is this idea of DRY that we take from software engineering, which is don't repeat yourself. That's one of our core principles in data modeling. If you move across the slide here, Cube also provides a robust access control mechanism. That's all delivered through JOT tokens and really strong security contexts. It's very nice for doing things like column level masking or row level security, if you need to do filtering and restrict groups from seeing different things. That gives you some really nice guarantees. They really let you do things like multi-tenancy. If you're building a customer-facing application or doing embedded analytics, that's quite nice. You don't have to build that yourself. And it's, of course, works across every BI tool that can connect to Cube as well. Next, we have our caching technology, which is a two-tiered cache that we call Cube Store. This is an aggregate-aware pre-aggregation system. It's used for helping us reduce redundant queries on our cloud data warehouse or our database or whatever we're connected to, and also for speeding up analytics substantially by maintaining caches of the aggregates that we know that we're going to need to solve our queries, and also by just maintaining query result sets. And finally, everything leaves Cube via a robust set of APIs that include a REST API, which Push makes use of, and our GraphQL API, and then finally our SQL API, which shows up as a Postgres interface for tools that need to speak SQL to Cube. We didn't really talk about the left side of this slide, but Cube has a very long list of database connectors. It's all the things you expect: cloud data warehouses, relational databases, some document DBs, a long tail of exotic things like time series databases as well. And if you're still not convinced, and if you're trying to think about maybe what the benefits of adding a semantic layer are to your stack, they typically show up in these sort of developer experience and kind of developer productivity metrics. And we think about data consistency as being a big value, making sure that the data models you're defining in the business are defined in one place and that you can agree upon your metrics. Some folks call this a single source of truth, but I think that term's been overused quite a bit. Again, data security is quite important. If you have multiple tools running around and you're doing ACLs in those tools and you're doing security in those tools, it's very hard to be really ironclad in your data governance and your data security and understanding, what the access controls will be across a whole different set of tools. Performance is provided, again, by our caching technology. If you have a data warehouse that maybe doesn't handle the analytics queries that you need to run so well, you're going to get a lot of value out of Cube Store. And again, these sort of developer experience benefits, I'll lump these all together with the stack flexibility, time to value, and future proofing. These are something that our customers tell us that they value about Cube by being able to sort of disintermediate all of their consumption tools and all the places where people are using data and their databases. That allows them to be very flexible in swapping components out. Perhaps you want to change a data warehouse or you want to add a new tool on the front end with a semantic layer in the middle. That's quite straightforward. So with that, again, this is kind of one more slide here where, just if you're not quite sure where we fit, again, I would say right next to data warehouses. And then typically folks route everything through their semantic layer. We set adjacent to reverse ETL and to transformations, but we don't do those things. So it's just a good overview of where semantic layers are if you're not quite sure. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Zach.
Thanks, Brian. Just a quick intro on myself. One of the co-founders of Push. And we have my co-founder, Britton, here with us today. He'll be available to answer any questions that are more technical. A little bit more about myself. I have an analytics background, so working on analytics teams with a lot of the BI tools and sort of data consumption layer tools that the industry is very familiar with at this point. Yeah, I guess like the history of Push, and are coming up with what we're working on today is really tied into semantic layers. So we were really frustrated with the sort of lightweight semantic layers that we had to build into BI tools, handling that logic. And we really saw an opportunity for a system that could create an API for a lot of the data sources that we were working on and the power of the data applications we could build on top of that. So what we title ourselves as is business observability. So if you think about other forms of observability, there's been software observability through companies like Datadog. More recently, we've seen data observability to manage and monitor data quality. We see sort of Push being the next iteration of observability with a focus on the business. So developing a model of a business and creating ways to automatically surface what's important and what the business should take action on to improve and achieve their goals. So moving to this slide, I talked about this a little bit, the sort of importance and significance of introducing semantic layers. Traditionally, data teams have modeled all of their business and all of their data in warehouses and schemas, and then had to rely on the people consuming data to handle these last mile workflows and tasks, going from tables to sort of what Brian spent a lot of time talking about, aggregates and metrics, how we actually measure a business. So we can manage that logic and code, like Brian said, with the semantic layer. We don't need to have people use SQL to access that data. We're not passing around SQL queries. So there's a ton of benefits of that. And where we come in with using and leveraging these semantic layers is actually building a model of your business. So if you think about, data modeling, you can think of what Push does and does with your semantic layers, actually model your business. So what does that mean? How is that different than what we do with BI tools today? It's about bringing in a lot more richer context that we can then build more intelligent products off of. And the term that we've been using, which we recently launched, is the idea of a business graph. So bringing in your measurements from a semantic layer like Cube, tying those measurements to different departments, different owners, so that we can keep the right people informed of changes in their business, bringing in the goals around the business wants of what the business wants to achieve. That is what we see as the model of a business, and what we're doing is building on top of that model, and we'll share a little bit more about what we're doing there. So once we have all this context in one place, we know how to measure the business, we know what goals they want to achieve, we know who needs to stay informed of what changes. We can do a lot of really powerful things. So in this example, we're helping companies understand where they're at right now in terms of what goals they want to achieve. We can help them predict where they want to be. So with a company, Save a Tree, which is one of our customers, we're helping them determine, hey, you're below your target. What do I need to do to then close that gap and achieve that goal? And part of the secret sauce, which we'll get into during the product demo, is not just understanding how we define metrics, but how they relate to each other to eventually sort of build that business model. So in this example, bookings is a very important metric for Save a Tree. Different metrics that cause bookings to go up or down could be leads generated, could be marketing spend. And what we've been able to do is use causal models and regression to be able to help them understand that relationship and understand if they're below their target, how they can increase leads or increase marketing spend to then hit that goal. So transitioning to some other use cases of what we can do with this metrics-based system, and a system that is aware of who needs to stay informed on what metrics and what's going on in the business. Another company we're working with, RudderStack, we've been able to help their customer success team through more personalized analytics, right? So rather than having a data team, and this was something that I did back in my day, build one dashboard for the customer success team, one dashboard for the sales team, we can have users subscribe to the metrics and dimensions that matter to them and get updated on those changes. So in customer success, what we found really valuable is if I'm a customer success manager, I want to stay updated on metrics for the accounts I own. And what we've been able to do with Push is have those CSMs subscribe to the customers they own and get a report every morning showing how usage has changed. And then the last example I wanted to go through was just like less on the business side of the value you get with using a tool like Push with Cube, but really what it means for data teams and like honing in on the value there, where you can manage your metric definitions in code in one place. You're not managing SQL queries and passing those around the business and having different definitions of revenue and churn. What you can do with Cube and Push is pull through that data model, pull through your measures, pull through your dimensions to then create metrics. So Push is all focused around metrics, and what we'll also see in the demo is how we convert those measures, or join, I should say, a measure to a time series dimension to create a metric. And I just included this quote here, like, using Cube has been just very impressed with how easy it is to get set up, to go from a series of tables in your warehouse to a semantic model is really fast. And I think Tony is going to show us a little bit about that.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach. Yeah, let me get my screen shared up here. Great. So we'll just kind of go through a little bit of the, thinking about Cube when you're getting started. First of all, we're cloud hosted, but we can get deployed next to your data in any cloud provider, any region. Once you've kind of selected your cloud, you're going to go through and select your data source. So this is kind of the first step to getting your data into Cube. You pick your normal, enter your normal connection information as you might expect. And then Cube's going to send its queries through these IP addresses, depending on which region you've selected. We also offer VPC connectivity. So if you have additional security requirements, we can comply with that as well. So when you're getting connected, you're going to get presented with a data model generator. So you can choose, which fields and elements, which objects like tables and views that you want to bring in. We introduce those objects as cubes. That's kind of the base layer of the Cube data model architecture. And then from there, we select which columns we want to bring in as dimensions. We pick the dimension type. You choose your primary keys. This helps with avoiding things like chasm traps and Cartesian products, where we need to know, what account or account distinct is calculated on. So important to have primary keys in your tables and in your cubes. We can add joins to join those different cubes together, and all those relationships are kept under source control. And then we deploy either, as Brian said earlier, either a YAML model or a JavaScript model. JavaScript's kind of our bread and butter from traditionally, as part of a React stack or with our REST API, GraphQL API, presenting out to those type of embedded analytics. And then for YAML with the data engineering stack with Python and Jinja, YAMLs can be easier to work with, but both models work functionally the same. So that data model generator actually spits out a series of YAML files. So each of these YAML files is for a specific cube, and you'll see it's pointing to an upstream source. So the customer's SQL table here is represented. You've got your dimensions. Each of these is brought in. It's pretty vanilla here, but you can start to get creative as far as customizing the SQL. Anything you want to type in here for SQL, you can put case statements. You can put, you can make your own fields as well, your own elements that will be custom fields, and you can enhance your data model this way. You can also add measures. So, first here's an example of some joins that are under source control here. You're not having to manage these in the data products or the BI tools downstream. They're all kept here in the kind of the single source of truth, as Brian said. But you can start to add things like aggregates. We call them measures, and sometimes you might call them metrics as well. And we can have those specific types, things that don't live necessarily in your data source, but things that we can calculate on the fly here as part of your data model. So in Cube, we've got the ability to kind of test out these metrics these measures as you're making them. So for example, we can look at that sum by amount, sum of amount by status. We can see which SQL is going back to the data source. And then we can get an idea of what the query is going to look like. How do I issue this query from a front end tool like Push? So we've got other abilities to do things like check out the data model within the SQL runner. Check out the fields, make sure our types are correct, and get a little profile of what's going on. And then as those queries do come in from the front end tools, no matter whether they're REST API or SQL API, they're going to be captured in our query history. So we've got the ability to see if those were cached or not, which type of cache they hit. We can audit the query and say, hey, this is something that I want to make sure we have under pre-aggregation so it performs better, or so I'm not pushing that data back or pushing that query back to my data source and spinning up, burning through a lot of my data warehouse credits, for example, unexpectedly. So we've got also the ability to see the top queries as well. So you can kind of sort by or you can see by the total duration that the queries took. So some low-hanging fruit, if you need to optimize something that's run quite a bit, you want to make it even faster, you can do that here. And you can also manage pre-aggregations as well. No, nothing on this deployment here, but you can usually see a list of objects that we've stored in Cube Store as well. And then our performance, so you can monitor the actual performance of your Cube Store and your API workers, and adjust the throttling on those, adjust the capacity that you need. It's, just a few basic levers to control your deployment size and the auto scaling or auto suspension functionality of your Cube Cloud account. So a lot of cool tools here to help you make the most of that. So, and then finally, I think the last thing I wanted to show is how the data leaves Cube. As Brian mentioned, through our API layer, we have REST API, GraphQL API, and SQL API. There's for SQL, it's Postgres. So any of these normal BI type tools, you're going to connect through a Postgres interface, with normal host and port. But with Push and a lot of the more developer-friendly and more modern applications, they're able to use the REST API and JOT tokens to provide additional customizability, if that's a word, with authorization tokens, and then our different REST APIs. You can hit the Meta API, or you can hit the Load API to either load in the data, or you can load in the metadata for the cube. So yeah, a lot of great functionality, but I'll go ahead and turn it over to, I think, Brendan for a demo of Push.
Cool. Thanks, Tony. Give me one sec to pull up my screen. Cool. Thanks, Nathan. All right, so if you like, I think we're gonna start a little bit with just like how to set things up, show you a little bit about what we're bringing into our platform from Cube, and then we can get a little bit into like the sexier data science AI as well. I guess playing into the theme of Valentine's Day. But just like imagine sort of like the old world of, you connect Tableau to your cloud data warehouse, you see 50 tables, and you as the data team or analytics team is building up these models in Tableau, then building up these dashboards. You're putting all this effort into sort of defining your business in your BI tool. What's cool about a semantic layer and connecting that is that onboarding time and level of effort to turn on one tool can essentially go to zero, and it can allow you to more easily use many tools. So I'm going to do some of this live and pray that everything goes smoothly. But connecting to Cube, really easy through the REST API. Just share some API credentials. And then to walk you through like just converting, using your measures and dimensions and that existing semantic model in Cube and translating it into metrics and our metrics-based system, we can pull from our Cube model. So this is all the measures we have in the instance that Tony was walking us through. So let's say we want to pull customer count. How do we want to measure customer count over time? We want to look at when they're created, and that can bring us to the metric of customer acquisition. And then more around the context of what we're bringing in, like what does the business want to happen with this metric? We want this to go up, and a little bit around the formatting. So I already brought in some other metrics from Cubed here, but basically the point I'm trying to make is like through these API integrations, and we can import more metrics from our Cube models pretty easily here. This is more of like a bulk import. We can very quickly and very easily have a view into our business and not have to go through the hard work of defining that logic in a new tool. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the business graph and just like the model we're building around a business and all the information that we're using, the context that we're bringing in. So with Cube and with a semantic layer, we are essentially bringing in the measurements of the business, right? So orders is defined in this way. Orders is a marketing metric. We can add specific business owners or analytics owners, the people who want to stay updated on changes in order volume. Next is goals, right? What goals does the business want to achieve? And that context allows us to deliver insights around whether you're going to hit your goals. If you're not on track to hit your goals, what can you do to change? What do you need to do now to hit your goal at the end of the month? So next would be what I alluded to a little bit before, was like not just the measurements themselves, but how they relate to each other, right? And sort of modeling the business and the business model itself. Back to the example with Save a Tree, knowing that profit is an output metric of how many marketing dollars we're spending, and leveraging causal models to determine how marketing relates to the output of profit and what we can do with optimizing or changing marketing spend to hit our goals or increase profit. We're also bringing in dimensions. Dimensions is something that is really important and often not something you see, I guess, centralized in something like a BI tool. Being able to look at your business not just through the individual measurements, but the actual dimensions. So if I'm a country manager or a regional manager for a given country, I want to subscribe to that country, and I can get those updates in Slack or email, which I'll show you a little bit more around our focus around distribution. So I guess sort of going into what we can do with all of this context. Our first product we built was very focused around delivering data to the places where people were working, so Slack. So I'll walk you through a pretty quick example of how we can use a semantic layer to deliver reporting in a really easy way. So this is a report I built. You can see all the metrics that we brought in from Cube. We can also convert those Cube measures into metrics directly in our report builder. And some more advanced features, distributing by dimension. So if I want, someone to get a report based on a given traffic source and other people to get, I can distribute using a dimension, which is good for teams that, where people care about different pieces of data, sort of going back to the customer success example with RudderStack. But we're just going to send this to a channel, keep things simple. We've also built sort of integrations with traditional BI tools, so attaching a dashboard. But I'm going to go ahead and send a test report, see if that comes through, and we'll see what it looks like in Slack. Okay, so it came through, yay. So pretty simple report, like using your Cube metrics to distribute data into the places where people work. We've had a lot of companies adopt this product. It's really simple. It gets people looking at data more often. You can very easily thread that message. So, hey, looks like orders are up And what something we'll be building into the future is being able to leverage these conversations as well as context to understand what's happening in the business. And you can see my message has already been brought into our platform. So being able to look at conversations around reports or metrics that are in sort of creating this place where teams can very easily manage their business. And then lastly, we have sort of our insights feed here. So another thing that can be distributed in a tool like Slack, email, and a nice way to stay up to date on your business using, we have a anomaly detection, trend detection, insights around pacing to goal and projections. And we'll be continuing to invest in new ways that we can generate interesting and valuable content and distribute it to the right people in the business. So I think that's it from my side. And I think we'll open it up to questions.
Thanks, Zach. I appreciate you going through the demo and kind of showing off, how Push.ai works with Cube and kind of how you guys think about metrics and semantic layers. And I notice in the Q&A, it looks like we have one question already, but if anybody else out there has any questions for either the Push.ai team or for the Cube team, we're happy to answer them. And so go ahead and get those in, and I will read this first one, and I think this is going to be for either Zach or Britton. So the person in the audience asks, how do you handle situations when a metric on a per customer basis falls below a certain minimum threshold that the push message to the customer success operator only occurs once? I'm not quite sure about that, so I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts there.
Yeah. Britton, do you want to go since you haven't had a chance to talk yet? Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm Britton, the CTO of Push. Happy to answer these types of questions. For us, we think about the semantic layer objects as their own entities. So being able to look at metrics or dimensions, or what we're talking about with a per customer is a dimension value in our way of being able to think about it from a technical side. So for every customer, when they're a dimension as a customer, we have each of the individual customer names as dimension values. We'll be able to monitor when we've sent notifications, such as Zach mentioned, we have outlier detection, or if you've set a threshold, when we've last sent a message regarding that particular alert for that particular customer, and then make sure that we don't send it multiple times. And then for those same push messages, we can send them out to, as Zach was showing, specific channels or specific email addresses, wherever you want that customer alert to have gone to. So a bit of making sure that we don't create too much noise, as well as making sure we get it to the right person.
Cool, thanks for the answer. We had another question come in. The viewer asks, what is the advantage of Cube over the Looker semantic layer? This is going to be an interesting answer, I think. Looker and their LookML was really kind of like most people's maybe first reintroduction to the idea of semantic layers. The idea of semantic layers actually go like way back with products like MicroStrategy and business objects and those things if you go back far enough. But in kind of like the modern data stack era, like LookML was probably the first time someone ran into a semantic layer. At Cube, we took a lot of thinking and a lot of inspiration on maybe how to build a better version of LookML. And what we built here, we think of some of the ways that we've improved that by adding the very strict security contexts and JOT tokens for doing things like embedded analytics, for adding caching with Cube Store, which our Cube Store is all proprietary, built in Rust. It's an implementation of Apache Arrow called Data Fusion. It's incredibly fast and very good at being aggregate aware and doing pre-aggregations. And then, of course, we sell our product as a universal semantic layer that really focuses on connecting to, as many databases as we possibly can, as long as they can speak SQL and we can figure out how to connect to them. And on the other side of that, connecting to as many downstream tools as we can. So the idea of openness and this like universal nature of SQL is really core to what we do. Let's see. This user asked, what kind of pressure does this put on the DB? How often are queries run? I think this is probably going to be an answer for the Push.ai team. So I'll talk to you guys or let you guys answer about how you think about like, retrieving metrics and like what that does for database loads.
Yeah. So for retrieving metrics, it doesn't put very much, if at all, a lot of load on the database. For us, we're typically monitoring on a daily basis. Business metrics don't move too quickly, and most businesses can't operate at real time. We do have the ability to do that through connectors like Cube plus Materialize or other types of systems that are designed for real time. But for most of our workloads, it's usually a handful of queries a day. So maybe a couple hundred of very basic aggregates. If you're using Cube, you can also get pre-aggregation so that it doesn't even need to hit your database more than the one time to pull it into Cube. So there are ways to optimize and reduce the workload pretty significantly.
Yeah, it's good to hear that. I think it's an interesting question, because I think a lot of folks have sort of maybe been bitten by what you would call like data observability tools, and like realizing that on their Snowflake instance that just metadata queries are like 30% of their bill. It's not a great look. So yeah, it's I think that's one benefit of definitely combining something like Push.ai with Cube, is that we're able to do a lot of that caching, and then you guys are reusing that. So there's not really much database load at all. While we're waiting for more questions to come in, I'm going to give you guys kind of a softball here. How does somebody get started with Push.ai? Just tell us a little bit about the onboarding process. I mean, I'm sure Push.ai is the website. So how do people learn more about you guys?
Yeah. Well, I guess two ways. I mean, it depends like how social you want to be. You can just reach out directly to me or Britton. My email is zach@push.ai. You can book a demo with us on our website. We'd love to meet you and share a little bit more about the direction we're going in, things that we're working on right now. But we're also self-serve. So we have a free tier of our product, so you could get going, connect a semantic layer. If you're not using a semantic layer yet, you can connect just a cloud data warehouse, define your metrics yourselves, and start, sending data to Slack using our reports product.
Cool. Looks like maybe I'll give it another minute or two here and see if we get any more questions. I guess, Nathan, if you want to maybe go on and kind of talk about our resources page, and then if we get another question at the end, we'll sort of. Oh, hold on. We had another one come in. Okay. Yeah. Right before we got there. There's a viewer who asked, what are some examples of the take action feature in Push.ai using the Cube integration?
Yeah, so it's an exciting question, like something that we are really invested in. Like, how do we enable teams to take action on data? We see that, being a problem still very much today, with teams focusing mostly on dashboards and not necessarily focusing around how do I take action on things. So I'd say like the most powerful piece that we deliver today is getting data into the places where people are already spending their time, and being able to have conversations around data more easily, because you can't really do that in BI tools as easily today. You may, I think another Zach asked a question, but you may have seen like the take action button. Some things you can do with that button would be create notes or annotations around that metric. You could assign an action item to someone. So facilitating and creating workflows around data and then tying everything back to the right place, right? So in Push, where I can see a metric, see how it's changing, is how we see ourselves building in that direction.
Cool. Looks like we had a couple more questions come in here. Another viewer out there asks, what are the biggest use cases for Push.ai and Cube so far? And then they go on to ask, like, is this like customer success? Is this C-suite? Do you guys want to talk a little bit about your customers and kind of who mostly finds like the most success with the product?
Yeah, Britton, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I got this one. And I can combine it with a few others that we had in the chat as well.
Yeah, just go for it.
Try and knock out a couple because they're all interrelated. So for us, we found the most success operating at more of the executive level, at least for now. We would love to be able to operate across the whole business eventually. But for executives, one of the biggest issues when you're building with data products is everyone treats these metrics as siloed individual ways of measuring success. And what we've been able to do with our biggest customers, most successful deployments, is be able to take all of that metrics, and Zach showed this in one of the interfaces, relate all of the measurements. So both at the relating metrics to each other, as well as relating dimensions to each other, and being able to create this really good top-down view of the whole business ecosystem, and be able to layer on some data science over top of that. So one of the things that we haven't developed an interface for, but we're doing for a couple of our customers, is being able to identify leading indicators of success, saying this particular set of metrics with 3 to 4 weeks of lead time is going to result in your revenue that you produce, and being able to help them better orchestrate their business as a byproduct of saying you are on or off target from the goals that you've set for these particular metrics. Again, back to one of the things I said earlier, we think about metrics and dimensions and dimension values as first-class entities in our system. So you're able to actually map goals or OKRs or whatever sort of number you want a given metric to hit, or a given metric for a given dimension, or a given metric for a given dimension value. So we've got this really complex ecosystem of being able to set sophisticated goals. Then back to that executive top-down view, if you're on or off track from those goals based on our algorithms, we'll alert that person. We'll say, hey, you need to potentially make these adjustments or hit these upstream milestones to be able to hit this downstream goal. All combining together into a really nice strategic orchestration of a business with the lens specifically of your measurements, all powered by something like Cube.
Cool. It's a great answer. I think that kind of took a couple of these questions all at once. So good job. We did have one more question about the deployment model of Push.ai. I can talk about Cube, but are you guys deployed in a way where a customer can buy you on-prem, or are you cloud SaaS only?
We're a cloud SaaS only.
Okay. Yeah. I kind of expected that. So Cube is also primarily deployed as a cloud SaaS offering with our Cube Cloud product. There is a Cube open source project as well that you can run, but it's only community supported, and you can run that on-prem if you want. Let's see. We had one more, and I think this is going to be for the Push.ai team. The viewer asks, is Push able to dig into the data to find which metrics with which dimensions are interesting to see? I assume this is going to be about like maybe which metrics are contributing to other metrics. I think we covered that, but maybe if you want to talk about that a little bit more.
Yep. Yeah, this may be about, right, like understanding, like if you think of like anomaly detection, right, it's very basic, popular use case. Like let's build anomaly detection on how revenue is changing, right? That is valuable, but like the real value in understanding what's driving the business is looking across dimensions, right? Looking across dimensions, and then also looking across like what inputs to revenue. So I would say, like, in terms of looking within a metric like revenue, being able to look at revenue by product, revenue by marketing channel, revenue by country, like that's where the value comes. And I think that's what a lot of the value of using a tool like Push, and also Cube bringing in the ability to very easily and programmatically look across a metric and all the dimensions to find those interesting changes or data points that are driving top line revenue. That's a big piece of the value that we bring.
Great.
Very cool. Thank you, Zach and Britton, for joining us. I feel like I'm living in the future with Push.ai. And for the rest of you, thanks for joining our webinar. Please be sure to check out the resources. You can do so right on the platform. Read more about our integration on our Cube website, as well as Push.ai. And you also can link right to the Getting Started guide for Push as well. All right, everybody, have a great day. Hope to see you next week at our next webinar for our product update on Playground and Performance Insights. All right, see you later, everybody.
Hey, thanks, guys.